Well, I mean, full transparency, this is a redo of our first podcast. You know, we work in IT and we work in the tech industry, but we couldn't seem to figure out the technology around podcast equipment. I had to consult very, very young people, ironically speaking of our previous discussion, to figure out how to make this whole thing work. But I think we're good as far as audio and
It's only our
like
fourth
that.
try. We should get it right one day, huh?
It's our second. It's our second, but might as well be our fourth. But yeah, I mean, we're here to talk really just to help, I think, two different communities, right? There's a community of other IT services providers out there that we want to try and reach and build community with. I'm a big believer in that, but we also have our client base. The big topic, we just had our corporate event last week, right? And I think the big topic was probably AI, right? We had a futurist. We had Tim present, you know, his ideas around AI. We've got internal initiatives. We got client reaching initiatives in place. Like, where do we want to start with talking about current state of AI right now? As a sales guy, I'll say this. Nobody really wants to buy anything. Everybody wants to talk about it, but nobody really wants to buy anything. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, because I think what people are learning, or companies may be learning or reflecting, is everything starts at a some type of workshop, right? It isn't something you just order and say, give me AI and it'll come, right? You need to figure out what that use case is, what's the data points, and you know, what's the truancy of that data or the validation of that data. The biggest thing I picked up around AI between my talk and the Cisco Futurist was the same thing we discussed around its capability, but also the fact that it can be used for evil things, right? I mean, the Cisco guy had you practically scared out of your pants, right? You know, and his talk wasn't, you know, he made some valid points, but there is a ethnicity around, you know, behavior with you know, with large language models, and now you have injectables or bad actors that can interfere with your code base. So you may expect one thing, but then someone gets into your code and breaches, and then you get a different result. So I think honestly right now, it's still, people are scratching their heads going, where do I go? How do I start this? And where I see they're starting at is around some of the things we're having challenges with, is around reporting, data warehouse, analytics within the run our business, right? And that's probably where most companies are going to focus, is how does it help us internally streamline our operations, and then how do we use it for leverage with the clients?
Yeah, kind of AI for dummies, right? So we kind of start with the basics. And so I think we start with, right, we're all using it as a search engine now, maybe as a text editor in some capacity. How do we take it to that next level and kind of start using it for, call it some kind of process automation? And so if we can find a really narrow application and take it from there, right? What's the medical field doing today, right, with X-rays and that kind of stuff? Very narrow application. It does great work there.
Even pharma, right? Even prescriptions, right? Now you could go get, if you have routine prescriptions, it's all workflow based. It goes to Walgreens off your United Healthcare portal, and away you go. So, yeah, it's definitely going to provide value. It's just how are we going to embrace it? And I think where we are looking at it here at MicroAge is essentially, you know, look at our back office. We all went through the operations breakout, and we saw, you know, the different touch points, and that it works. You know, they've got a great process, but it's a lot of hand holding. Can we help them by putting workflow processes in place, or embracing what they call robotic process automation to do a lot of the low level processing while they kind of manage the whole, right, type of thing. Matter of fact, I've set up a one-to-one with Carolyn Hawkins. I believe she's our resident Dynamics
really smart
coder. I'm going to be having a one-to-one with her, because in order for me to really understand how we're going to leverage this Power Automate person, I want to see what skills she has and how they could work together, because I imagine those two will be hand in hand.
Yeah. Do you imagine clients are having the same conversations right now?
Yeah, absolutely, right. I mean, it's the buzz, and frankly, it's the opportunity. You know, you look at the next 12 months, 24 months, and how you're going to expand your business. Certainly, opportunities for cost reduction. You know, leveraging the Power Platform or whatever platform you're using, Copilot, and how you're going to make that work. And again, taking baby steps. No one's going to go in there and frickin' all of a sudden say we are completely AI'd, whatever that means, right? And so, how do we take those, those baby steps and be successful?
Yeah, again, the whole concern around, so legal is concerning, because obviously you could go on to ChatGPT-4 and they could write a complete response in the first circuit, right? And it looks ethical, it looks right. But then if you look at it closely, there's probably references to cases that do not exist. So if you filed it, you'd be in somewhat trouble. But they're really worried about, again, exposing, right, their clients. And, you know, you have client attorney privilege, which is held up by court. So if something should happen, they could be liable.
I do
Yeah.
get a kick out of as we implement here at MicroAge and we do with AI. What we've learned is different people asking the same question on a different access level they end up with different answers. And so, the kind of the expectation is it's going to be like an Excel spreadsheet: 2 + 2 = 4, and the answer is it's not always, depending on your access. You may not always get not only the same answer, but frankly the accurate answer, right?
So from a data risk standpoint, what are some? Are there cost effective, or are there some easy initial strategic steps a business could make in order to understand their posture?
Well, so there's things you could do to benchmark yourselves and figure out whether you're, I would say, AI ready. A lot of that, we've sold it. It's called data risk assessments. You could do it with Microsoft. You could do it with Varonis. There's other companies that have that capability where they can scan your environment and look at looking for any type of what they would deem as confidential information. They're looking at security ACLs around different pertinent assets. It could be HR, it could be finance, whatever, and they're going to take a look and make sure that the membership is that of the role that's described, right? So you could start there. The other thing that I'm reading more about is people are just going greenfield. If they want to start it, it's greenfield because they know then it's clean. They could count on it. It's locked down.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this discussion about our own SharePoint site. Our SharePoint site is assets that have been built over the last 12, 15 years that site's been up. And it's evolved. But the problem with it is we didn't, like any company, right? There's lack of standards back there. So it's kind of Wild West on what's posted, how the content's assembled. It's somewhat organized, but it isn't. Do we just want to restart that, or do we want to fix what we have? And so, we're going to go through that, I think, as an exercise probably end to end in early next year to figure out how do we structure SharePoint to where it's usable.
Yeah.
Meaning that, I'll use a client. We have a client in North Scottsdale that I visited with Sean Mann, and everything in SharePoint for them is a portal with a link with a palette, and it clicks on it, it works. And he's the one who told me, he's like, we just started greenfield. I didn't even retrofit it. Because it's impossible.
But going back to your Varonis comment, I'm not sure how it works, right? So it goes through and it says, okay, Susie, whoever has access to these particular positions or data within our stuff, but it doesn't prevent me from 3 years ago saving a file in that particular drive. It won't identify that Rob saved a file there that he shouldn't have saved there, right? I mean,
Yeah,
how do we protect that stuff where maybe I was a little irresponsible 3 years ago and saved something in some place I shouldn't have?
So it's not an enforcement tool; it's a reporting tool. So it's a monitoring tool. So it's going to continuously scan. Once it does the benchmark, and it basically shows you, hey, here you have an AD membership called HR, but you have Rob Zack, who's a member of HR, and Rob Zack does not have an affiliation with HR. That's a problem. It's going to red flag it and say we have a ACL breach, and it'll continue to do that. So it's counting that you're going to do some type of enforcement or action. Basically, what it's doing, it's just pointing out the mistakes you've made in your environment or the potential issues of security breach or data breach. That's what those products are for. Now, some do have enforcement where they can either remove the ACL, or in the case that they find PII or some type of sensitive data, they could do what they call a strike through or white list it, where essentially they'll cover it up from being used, and that's including structured data, which is interesting because that's your SQL databases and stuff like that. But that comes as a price, right? So,
but back to my wife's grandmother's recipe. It's been dead for years. She's passed away many years ago or whatever. We've got the secret recipe. I go ahead and save it on the HR drive. Mm-hmm. The fact is I have access to the HR drive. Now all of a sudden I didn't want HR to know that recipe. The fact is they will not know it very easily if they ask our Copilot, what is the recipe for my grandmother's?
Well, it'll come up if we index it. So just because it's there.
Well, when you say it'll come up, the fact is we see it was a file Rob saved in HR, but Rob has access to HR, so who cares?
That's what I mean. So if we turn on seismic indexing, it's going to come up. So anyone can say, "Hey, find Rob's mother's
there goes the recipe
for
exactly.
whatever lefse or something."
So it's worst cases is actually others obviously confidential information
right. So,
that I saved somewhere.
Ideally, before you enable things like Copilot, you do the DRA assessment, and that's what we're pitching through our ManageWise, right? Because once you turn it on, it's indexed, data's there, unless you remove it. That's the risk.
All roads seem to lead back to the user. You know, a lot of the conversation I have with clients, it doesn't really matter what we do. The users are either they're not going to adopt, or they are going to adopt. They're going to adopt it in their way, or it's already too late. You know, you take Microsoft Teams as an example. During COVID, it was heavily adopted, no governance built around it. Now a lot of customers are having, or businesses are having to reverse engineer all that, destroy and rebuild how they govern things like Microsoft Teams. You know, where do you start? Especially when it comes to getting users to get on board with what you're trying to do, not just around AI, but just security and governance in general.
I'll be quite frank, users don't care about security. They don't. They care about fast, ease, and the fact that they can land something somewhere. That's all they care about. When it comes to content-related shareable data, they'll post something every now and then, but they're really 90% of the time they're retrieving something that they need, right? Whether it's a contact, a channel contact, a vendor part name, something. You know, they don't care about that. They care about themselves. And not, I'm not saying that in a bad way, because the business for them is about their business, their money, their GP. So we have to be able to put policies. That's where policies come into handy, right? So if you have right policies and you're able to give them the experience of, hey, it's all about you, but under the covers, we're watching you. That's what we need to build. We don't have that yet.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty strict, and the fact is employees hate the restriction, right? So.
Yeah, it's like we had a call today about admin rights on our workstations. Like, why do people need admin rights? Well, because they want to be able to change their time zones. I'm like,
Right.
Is that the only problem? That and a few other things they want to install something. I'm like, tell them no.
Universal UTC, baby.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, let them do the math. I mean, there's okay, I get it, right? We want to make people happy, but also we have to start thinking about, in today's world, about our security posture. I don't want to go into a security discussion because we're talking AI, but it does matter, because that goes hand in hand with everything we're trying to build.
Well, you're in the risk management business, right? You're an executive of a. Where do you draw the line, or where is it acceptable in these days when it comes to users running around with scissors or doing whatever it is they're doing?
Yeah, it's never. I lose sleep every night over it, right? I mean, the fact is you know, we're all just one click away from a catastrophe. And so how do we put the right controls, procedures, processes in place, or else we risk the business, right? We've certainly seen companies that have certainly taken, we'll call it amazing pain, because of one employee that made one bad decision. And it's, so yeah, lose sleep over every day. Obviously, we do have controls, procedures, processes, software in place. You're still only as good as your weakest link, right?
Yeah. So you're looking at spend from two different angles, right? How do we get what's going on in the industry as far as businesses or clients, and then you, right, as a leader of the organization. We're halfway through 24. What's your impression or thoughts, at least, on spend? You know, IT spend in general.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the excitement is around process automation, right? We'll call it, and we call it beginning AI. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology or not, but back to how do we take the technologies that is there and make our company far more efficient in how we do everything. Obviously, it's a cost reduction strategy. Obviously, as AI gets better and better, it's more about a revenue generating strategy. How do we arm our associates with the information they need to do their jobs better, to be better, to then obviously do a better job with our clients and make us more successful, right? And the economy's good, right? The bottom line is we all think it's bad, but the fact is it's good, and we kind of forget that. Interest rates are going to start coming down a little bit. Should open up, I'll say, companies' opportunities to spend in technology to ensure they're positioned properly for the future.
So do businesses staff or outsource? I run into a lot of that. Clients are debating that. They're looking at the finances of that. When I say outsourcing, I mean like a managed services provider versus hiring a guy.
Yeah, again,
or person.
Obviously I look at it relative as a business person, relative to I want to hire people for the brains of the job. For the brawn, I'd rather outsource it. And I'll say make sure I just have controlled costs, and I'll say less dependence on my internal resource. So if it's brawn, I really like the concept of outsourcing. If it's brain, you know what? You want to keep your intellectual property of really understanding your business, what you're trying to accomplish. Certainly, go back to my process automation. I want people that really understand my business, that are designing that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
overall, the fact is outsourcing works, and making sure. And by the way, then I'm relying on someone who's an expert at it, does it every day for a variety of companies.
Yeah. I think when it comes to cloud adoption, the pattern I've seen lately is aging infrastructure. Is there a reason why there's a lot of aging infrastructure out there right now? Was it the pandemic that kind of slowed people down from refreshing, and then they decided to renew support and hang on for a few more years?
No, not necessarily. I think a lot of it too is there's a lot of legacy apps that are still critical to business. If you think of the mainframe, there's probably maybe a few companies that offer shared resource for mainframe in the cloud, but most often it's on-prem. If you have a legacy system that just from an economic standpoint or just from an urgency standpoint or critical mass of the business doesn't make sense to put in a shared environment such as the cloud, it's on-prem. So I just think there's a lot of people have adopted multi-cloud versus all-in cloud. Now companies that have been evolved since 2018 and beyond, they're probably full cloud. But companies back in the day, like banks and healthcare, they run 50-50, man, because it's just the cost of transformation. So that's the other reason. So I'm not surprised by that. I mean, data centers is going to be here for a reason. That's why we keep building them. And it's not because clouds are coming up. It's just because, what you have seen is companies don't want to own the data center space, but they rather lease it out. Makes sense, right? So you're seeing the evolution of data centers popping up everywhere. In Mesa, Arizona, we've got now 5. NTT, Facebook, Google, and now this other one, I forgot the name, but it's supposed to be fully green, waterless type of data center, right? So, and that's because, again, people are embracing multi-cloud. So they have the on-prem and off-prem kind of situation.
And it's a financing philosophy, right? How much do you want to spend today, put in capital investment? How do you want to pay over time? And even if you're capital investment, how much do you buy or lease? And then back to the point of how much flexibility do you want if your business changes, either because it's in a rapid growth phase or unfortunately in we'll call it some kind of decline phase. And
I want to touch on a question you talked about earlier around the, do we hire services or do we not? I want to kind of tagline that as in, I think right now we're in a complete dynamic shift skill-wise in IT. Where IT usually was around the network, the servers, the virtualization. That's now the easy button. Where the skills are being focused. If you look at LinkedIn and you're looking at apps, you're hearing like Azure BI, Power BI. You're hearing about UiPath, robotic process automation, Python skills. You're hearing about the DevOps evolution has taken off, but now it's around process. So the skills that are being needed, and you're seeing that, and I do contribute to some of this to layoffs, that you could find a data center guy, out of every 10 applicants, you're going to find 8 really good data center guys. For really good Power BI people and people that understand robotic process automation, it's probably 1 out of 10. So that skill is in demand, where the others, you're seeing there's plenty, and there's plenty in the market, therefore there's not a lot of hiring. It's time to reskill. Time for that.
And the pendulum swings back and forth, right? I can't tell you in 3 years from today whether we see something different. I don't know.
Yeah. So as far as thoughts today are concerned, how does everybody win? When I say everybody, there's our clients out there, there's a partner community that we associate with, there's ourselves. What's the area of focus right now?
Well, I honestly think cybersecurity is still top of notch, right? I mean, everyone's worried about the what ifs. Mm-hmm. So cyber is a huge win. We have a great cyber team. If we get in front of our clients and understand their cyber roadmap, not just sell them something, but really play a part in their cyber journey, that's a big win for us. On top of that, I see what we're building in our cloud business. I'm trying to see if that's something that we should be doing internally in MicroAge, is adopting the same premise. So really looking forward to having that discussion. It's starting tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens from there. But honestly, we as MicroAge, we do almost 90% SaaS, but we do have on-prem resources being used for different things. It could be for file transfer. It could be for other things. Could we move those in the cloud, and will it be an economic move for us? On top of that, a security move for us. So that's something we're trying to hash out, but good stuff.
And just helping clients kind of look 3 to 5 years out, right? Because the fact is hard to predict. So we need to kind of figure out what target are we shooting for before we decide whether we're going to buy that particular server, whatever that looks like today, right? How does that work within your longer term plan? And that's same on the security side. What's the security journey? If a client asks, hey, I want a Fortinet firewall, of course, the best thing we do is say, we're not going to sell you one of those. Let's talk about the vision of what does your security look like. And by the way, if you want a Fortinet firewall, they're great firewalls, so that'd be great.
What do you think happened with Copilot?
I think Copilot is amazingly good start. And so the fact is certainly needs a little more refinement before we're going to sit there and say it's the tool we're looking for. But you got to start somewhere. We know the adoption, right, of just the whole concept of AI, and whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT, is through the roof. And so now, how do we take it to the next level? It's a great start, and I'm ecstatic to see where it's going to take us as not only for our company, for our clients, but for the world. And that's big stuff. But
It's a great way to put it, actually.
It was an appetizer taste, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to tease us with it by doing recall and transcription, which is
Right.
cool, right? And especially at the detail they could do it, right? They're able to actually leverage the neural part of transcription, where if you and I were yelling at each other on a Teams chat, it would tell it. Tim raised his voice. Rick was very stern. It would talk, right? It knew that. That's cool, but that's
stern.
just a teaser of where it's going. And I was at Redmond and saw, they realized, hey, yeah, it was typical marketing, right? We built it 20% or 15%. We released it, and the rest of it's coming. So it's a teaser. The adoption's gonna be slow because, again, the capability for the price is okay. It's not saving you a lot, but I think as they start releasing more of not just the Copilot framework and the products, but it's the plugins, right? That's the key. And Jason talks about this a lot, is the plugin ability. I mean, we're playing with it SharePoint today. I was in Copilot Studio earlier building a bot, and it has limitations, man. And once we can figure out, one is how can we automate or augment the algorithm, that's going to be helpful, and that's coming out. They just don't have it yet.
Yeah.
It's coming. But there's other products that are kind of beat them there too, though. Unfortunately, there's a product called Superhuman that is awesome. If you want like a personal secretary that'll manage your calendar and send automated responses, but it knows it and you tell it, it's beaten Copilot. Copilot can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at things that are already out there that have made the market, but it's in niche cases, and it's not a platform. Copilot's a platform. But
And back to the old adage, right? How to eat an elephant one bite at a time. AI is an elephant, and all we advise is that everyone just starts with a frickin' toenail and then work our way from there. So
Yeah. I'm just glad we're all being recorded right now.
no, I'm glad it's working. And I'm glad you're going to edit this too.
we'll see.